Hey there, friend! Welcome back to the Closing Chapters podcast, where every mission has a story. This is that transition period where I had clients started in South Carolina, but we moved to South Dakota as a military family. So this is another one of those situations where I had my amazing agent in my office that was helping me finish up some of these transactions and being the boots on the ground. Hey friends, welcome back. We are getting towards the end of August of 2019. This next transaction closed on August 28, 2019. And yes, again, if you remember, this is that transition period where I had clients started in South Carolina, but we moved to South Dakota as a military family. So this is another one of those situations where I had my amazing agent in my office that was helping me finish up some of these transactions and being the boots on the ground, but I already had worked the client, gotten them under contract, and they were just sitting pretty. So these clients were coming into Shaw Air Force Base, once again, another military family. He was going to be with the weather ops unit. And this is a classic scenario that we would run into quite often. The military member is out of pocket, like not available for whatever reason. They're back at the other duty station and don't have the flexibility to leave. They're out of training. They are deployed. They're TDY. All kinds of things could be going on. And on top of it, when you are doing weather ops, you are not necessarily working a nice shift. Like you're doing it's 24/7, right? And sometimes you're doing it for local or sometimes you're doing it for another area. There's a lot going on with that. So either way, in this scenario, the spouse was my primary contact, and she and her parents came and made a visit into town to look at houses and figure out where they wanted to be. And the catch-22 as well was that we didn't have a large budget, which is okay. But at the time, that was really sticky. And I'm going to tell you how this got sticky. We got close to the closing table and we all of a sudden didn't know if we were going to be able to get their loan through the final approval because of their debt to income ratio. This is one of the most important factors when you're purchasing a house and the lender's talking with you is they need your debt to income ratio to be approved by the underwriters. And VA loans have some flexibility with this, and most of the time we're okay. In this instance, this house was only $135,000. It was a great buy. However, the catch-22 is that it was in a higher tax bracket for Sumter. South Carolina, or the Sumter County, honors if you have a primary residence. All of South Carolina does, but in Sumter County, your primary residence has a tax break. If you have a secondary property, then it goes up. So it goes from 4% to 6%, but it about triples the amount of your actual tax bill. So if your tax bill was $1,200 a year, then all of a sudden it's about $3,600 a year. And whenever they put that amount into the escrow account, it was making them bust their numbers. Now, we know it's their primary residence. We know it will be brought back down to that 4% interest rate. As soon as they purchase it, as soon as they go to the tax office and give them a copy of their LES, it will be rectified. And this is one of the parts where picking your lender wisely truly matters. Most of my local lenders that get it, they understand, they know, they factor it in at the residential rate. And they have a way to do that. Like they have the bypass to understand and prove that will be what it should be. And the default, like the worst case scenario in this situation is that if a buyer does not file the documents that they need to, and they do get taxed at the higher tax bracket, then your escrow account's going to be short and you're going to owe money at the end of the year, and you're going to be given an opportunity to pay it in a lump sum or increase your payment over the next year to make up for that. Like, from the lender side of things, like, really, why can you not be understanding about this situation? Like, it is clear that these are the rules. Like, you can see it, I can prove it, but because the current tax bill was at that 6% tax bracket, they were using a box lender is what I like to call it, like a big national lender, and it was not somebody local, it was not somebody in South Carolina State, and they just would not adjust it. And that was super, super frustrating. We figured it out. We got it done. They did not adjust the tax bracket. We had to fix that retroactively. And that's the thing that's also very hard is like until it is fixed and until the lender actually, like on the back end of the loan, it gets rectified, that means their payment is higher than what it should be, right? Because our escrow account is built into our mortgage payment. So that they're trying to collect $3,600 a month when really it's only going to be like $1,200 a month. And sometimes it's very hard after the loan is in place to get them to actually go back and change that in queue. And whatever money you've already spent, you've already spent. It's already going to it. So until the end of the year, sometimes you don't get that money back whenever all of a sudden there's this huge underpayment and then they have to release the rest of the funds to you. So that can be relatively frustrating all the way around. And it's something that we explain to our buyers up front, but also another beautiful reason why you use lenders that know the local guidelines, rules, regulations, tax breaks, whatever the case might be. That's super, super important. And it's just as important to use local lenders for other programs, right? Like sometimes when you're using national lenders or lenders from different states, they don't necessarily know what the first-time homebuyer programs are, or if there's a HEROES program, like grant money for our first responders and our teachers and medical providers. There's a lot of things that go on like that, down payment assistance programs through the state, that national lenders are not tracking unless you bring it to their attention and then they go look for it. Also, a lot of those programs, you have to be a certified lender, like accepted into that program to be able to utilize those programs. So once again, most national lenders or lenders from out of state are not going to be in that bucket. So just keep in mind, if that's something that you're going to need, you want someone that's going to advocate for you, make sure your taxes are in the right bracket for your loan, or you want to take advantage of a state program or something available to you, then you may need to choose very wisely who your lender is. But back to the house. They picked out a really cute 3-bedroom, 2-bath little brick rancher. And it was in like a nice little sweet spot of town where they could go in lots of different directions, which was amazing. The holdup is that one, it needed to be painted. It had some fun colors inside of it, which was to our advantage, right? Whenever there's something like that where it's, you know what, paint is cheap, my friend. You can do that when you get in the door. So I love that. That's an easy fix. The house as a whole is pretty darn solid. So cosmetic stuff like that, we can handle. That's not a big deal. And it's probably turning off a lot of other buyers. But the layout was fantastic. It had a separate formal dining room. It had a living space and then a decent sized kitchen. And it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath split floor plan. So primary on one side behind the kitchen, the other 2 bedrooms on the other side in a hallway. It had a garage and a fenced in backyard, which was important to them because they had puppers at the time. Now, the holdup with this property was that it had some big mamma jamma power lines in the backyard. And Mom was not a fan. And she was like, "Are you sure you're not worried about these power lines?" And there is definitely things to be concerned about. I don't know all of the ins and outs of it. Like the big power lines can have a buzzing noise. So that could be really annoying if you were sensitive to that, or you could hear that. You could not really hear that at this property. But it can also transmit certain things, and she was worried, like from a health perspective, was that going to be safe for her? And then also when she goes to resell it, is that going to hold her up? And that's all valid, but at the same token, it was a really great property in their price point, and there were not many other options that were meeting the same standard. This was not a brand new house, but relatively new. Like we weren't in an old 60s rancher or anything like that. So it was in the 2000s, and she was really happy about that. It was a little bit of a more modern layout, and it suited her very well. The backyard had no grass because it was super shaded, which didn't bother her one bit because once again, they had dogs, and they appreciated the fact that the dogs were going to have a really nice shaded yard. So all in all, she did listen to Mom. They talked it through and had a banter about it, but we ended up getting a really sweet deal on this house. and I could not be happier for them. So they actually did not stay at Shaw very long. I think they actually ended up getting out of the military and going back home because this spouse is a gem, and she went home to take care of a family member that just needed assistance. And that speaks volumes. But the other piece I wanted to come back to that's a really big reality with a lot of military families is why was their budget so low, so to speak? And at this time, you could buy a house for $135,000. Our first house in 2015 was $109,000, and it wasn't falling apart. It was fine. It needed to be updated, yes, but it had true hardwood floors throughout the whole entire house. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,600 plus square feet, 2-car garage, almost an acre of land. It was good. It was a good buy. We still have that property to this day. So anyhow, one of the things that's very common with military families is when we are shifting and moving, the spouse may not always have a job that is coming with or that they can continue working. So that was absolutely the case here. She did not have a job that would move with her. So when they were moving, it was based solely on his income, and he was relatively new to the military, let's say within his first stint. So first 4 to 6 years. So the pay and housing allowance is not plentiful at all at that point. And they were really having to base everything solely on his income because she did not have a job at that time. This is a classic scenario that we run into all of the time. It doesn't matter that I'm working right now. What matters is, can I prove income for this new location? And if I cannot, then they will not use my current income to help purchase the house. And that can be really disheartening, right? Because it's, as soon as I get there, I'm going to find a job. Okay, that's great, but that's not a fact. And that's what the lender's looking at is, I need facts. I need documentation saying, I know you will be receiving X amount. So it's really hard. So just keep that in mind whenever you are transitioning in the VA world. That's a very common thing. And I also wish that this is where people would understand from the selling perspective. It's really hard. Now, sometimes lately, I will tell you, it's felt pretty astronomical. The asks of buyers really has felt astronomical. It is, give me all of my closing costs, all of the commission, and your firstborn child, right? That's what it feels like right now. And the reality is that we are getting back into that normal atmosphere where cash is not plentiful. And that makes this very tough. But that is where most of the time on the listing side, I try to remind my sellers to be understanding and generous if they have the capability to, if it's worked in and it works for their numbers. I don't want anybody to give a house away. But most of the time, especially if we bought VA, we have received some assistance in some shape, form, fashion. And to pass that along to the next person is such a blessing and so helpful, because so often we are in this scenario where we're making a transition, and because the military is making us transition, all of a sudden one of the family members has lost a job, right? Or is having to transition into a different job, and we need somewhere to live like now. And now all of a sudden I'm limited so much because my income doesn't count, even though I've worked so hard all of this time. So keep that in mind. And also, on average, we have found out we did 4 moves in a year and a half, and then we stayed still for 3 years, and then we made 2 moves in a year when we got to North Carolina. So we have figured out on average per move out of pocket, even after the military pays us back for things, is at least $5,000. And I'm not talking like security deposits and money to buy a house. I literally mean just getting door to door, transitioning, the moving cost, right? The travel cost, like that type of stuff. So that's heavy. That's heavy, especially when you're moving consistently. It takes a long time when you, especially if you are working on a one family income, it takes a long time to build up $5,000 again, right? Imagine that. So if you are moving every 2 to 3 years, how long does it take you to get $5,000 back in your savings account? Chances are in that 2 to 3 years, you're probably not doing it. And then you're moving again. So then you're depleting more and more. And that is truly what happened in our case scenario too. We felt really good. Like we finally had a nest egg. Like whenever we started doing all of our moves to South Dakota, like I had worked really hard in 2017 through 19, really hard. I busted my little booty and we were doing good, right? I had paid for renovations at our South Carolina house. I had gotten to take 2 trips to visit my husband in Korea, and I had done a couple of other things, like would paid off vehicles, like some different things. So that was great. Like we were really in a decent position. And then we moved cross country to South Dakota. And then we moved cross country to South Carolina. And then I had to travel down to Alabama. Oh, by the way, towing a vehicle, paying for storage. And then we moved from Alabama to Missouri. And then we moved from Missouri to Tennessee. It's a lot of out-of-pocket expenses, and you are not getting paid back for all of it. You just aren't. So please remember this whenever you are dealing with a military buyer on the other side, that sometimes there's a meet in the middle, there's a give and take. And a lot of times we can probably be okay with a price point as long as we have the cash coverage. So there's always a different dynamic of what we need. And remember, sellers, there's always a different purpose for you selling in a different goal. Sometimes sellers are like, I really just want the highest and best situation. I just want my net. And some of them are like, no, I'm purchasing a house in another state. I need this sucker gone as quickly as possible. I'm willing to play ball. Let's go. Give me an offer in hand. So keep in mind that everybody has a different idea or goal. On the flip side, with the VA sellers, this is where it also gets very difficult when you've only held a house for 2 or 3 years. You may not have enough equity in your home if you did not put money down or did not pay more on your mortgage to actually be able to facilitate this. You may not be able to help pay for closing costs or a commission because you don't have enough equity in your home. And this is one of those scenarios where I truly say, hey, let's weigh our options, and should we have it for rent or for sale at the same time? And I do believe in that. And I actually saw another Tennessee agent recently post about that, and I was like, yeah, I've been saying that for years. If we are in a market where I cannot tell you that the floodgates are going to fly open and we're going to have an offer within the first week of having your house on the market, it is very wise, depending on your scenario, to go ahead and have it up for rent and up for sale if you are willing to do that. That way we have mobility and you are covered to the best of your ability. And right now, even that tactic is truly not a sure thing. In North Carolina, we have enough inventory to go around, honestly, at the moment. So the supply and demand chain is off kilter. We have a very, what I would say, normalized market. I was actually having this conversation with a client yesterday where they said, I don't understand, is this normal? My house has been on the market since the fall and we have it listed and we have it for rent. And when I look at the numbers, there's no clear correlation that if you are here, this house will move. There's just not. And it's a little hodgepodge, it's a little all over the place. And that's very normal right now. I've heard a lot of agents saying that. But if we back it up prior to 2020, it was always our norm to sign a listing agreement for a year's time frame. And back in 2016, 17, 18, it was normal to have an average of about 180 days on market. We had enough inventory, people had choices, and you had to just hang tight and wait for your buyer to come along. And I didn't have a problem with things selling. I didn't have a problem with holding the value. It wasn't that. It was just a matter of being patient and waiting for buyers because we had more inventory than we had buyers. And I think that we are back in that world. And it is just so hard to accept that when we bought in the midst of a craze, right? Your experience is, I didn't have a choice. There wasn't a lot of wiggle room. I thought somebody was going to come snatch this house out from underneath of me, or I had to buy it high, or I couldn't ask for closing cost coverage, or whatever the case may be. So a lot of times that's taking people back where it's, I don't understand. I bought in the past couple of years and it was so different. Why is it so hard now? And truly, this is a reminder that the military markets definitely impact things too. But in general, in the real estate world, every 90 days, we're recalculating and recalibrating and saying, hey, what is right now look like? What does the current market show. And that is what we truly need to go by, right? Because that shows us where the movement is. Now, to be fair, sometimes we're not planning well with our listings. And that was the case in this scenario. We didn't really have a choice. They had orders and it was not an ideal time frame. They were out the door December 2nd. There's not a lot of people, unless they truly have a reason to buy in December, that are looking for houses in December. There just isn't. I have closed plenty of transactions by the end of the year, but that means we've been on the market already for a little while. Or once again, they're coming in during the fall PCS season. There hasn't been as much of that. And the movement cycles have been shifted around a good bit, I feel like, in this past year or so with some of this, like the funding stuff where military movers have been stopped and not available. And so it's been just a wonky year in general. But think about it. December, January, February, right? There is movement, but that is not our key time frame that we think that we're going to have a lot of military buyers coming in. So even March, probably not. April, probably not. May, maybe. Right? You got to think around school systems. And for context, this is a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house on a half acre. So could somebody without kids buy it? Absolutely. But is there a good likelihood that someone that wants a little bit of space and wants space for children has a full family that would want it and it has a 3-car garage as well? Probably a good chance. So anyhow, that means we're probably waiting for school years to end, right? So at a minimum, people are starting to look now for the end of the school year so that they can transition at the end of May or by the end of June and be here and settled before summer block leave for the Army and then get back settled in before schools start between the end of July, beginning of August here. It is sometimes just a tough scenario, but in military markets, we are very cyclical. So if you are listing outside of those windows, your buyer pool goes down drastically. Are there other buyers in the market that aren't military? Absolutely. But not in the masses like what we're used to, where we have a huge surge of people coming. So either way, I say all that just to say, hang tight if you're listed right now. There is hope to come. We are in our sweet spot. I actually just talked about this morning about how if I'm planning a listing and I have the ability to, that I try to tell my sellers that after April 15th, so between April 15th and May 15th is my preferred window to get listings online if we can. And more than likely we will have really good success if that's the case. So if you are listed right now, hang tight. I really hope your time is coming. But just a reminder that there is something for everyone and we can make it happen. Sometimes we have to be patient and we just have to hang tight and play the game, my friends. Hey, I just wanted to say thank you for being here and listening in on this episode of Closing Chapters with me. I truly enjoy putting this content together and I hope that you enjoy it too. If so, could you like, subscribe, and share this episode with somebody you know that will enjoy it just as much as you did? Thank you so much.